Welcome, everyone, to the State Systems Interoperability and Integration Project Symposium. My name is Shel Culp. I'm the Chief Deputy Director for the Office of Systems Integration inside the California Health and Human Services Agency. And this is the first of two symposia that the grant is sponsoring. That is, the grant is funded by the Administration for Children and Families. And the grant is inspired by the Affordable Care Act and the federal funding underpinning the implementation of that act. So federal funding from the Affordable Care Act is conditioned upon demonstration of compliance with the Medicaid Information Technology Architecture, also referred to as MITA. So you'll hear a lot more about MITA in the coming days here. MITA is a collection of standards that we in government can use to help us be as efficient and effective as possible. The MITA standards help states prepare for interoperability, and the grant helps states prepare for MITA. Our specific grant is focused on preparing to break down the silos of information systems that have been built up over decades. So ever since there's been information technology, we've been building silos, essentially. We're thrilled that you're here from multiple departments within our own agency and from multiple agencies outside our department, from counties, from other states, from the nonprofit world, from education, from everywhere, because it's really critical that we are all having this same conversation at the same time. So in addition to the two symposia that this grant is sponsoring, the specific deliverables for the grant include a systems interoperability and integration plan and an organizational change roadmap for data sharing. So once we write the plan, we have a roadmap for how to implement that plan. Now, the authors of the plan are actually sitting in this room around, I don't know, maybe 15 tables. So you will all be co-opted into helping us write the plan and the roadmap. So don't think you're getting away without doing work. Okay, how many people remember Robert Fulghum? Anyone? Okay, a couple people. He wrote a New York Times bestseller in 1988 called All I Really Need to Know I Learned in Kindergarten. Now, after I put this slide together, I revisited it a day later and realized that it looks like I'm saying that our HIE plan is written by kindergartners, which is obviously not the case. So that was kind of an unfortunate design error that I interjected. But the first thing that Robert Fulghum recounts from his kindergarten days is share everything. Everybody remember that? Share everything. Somewhere in there, there was also the suggestion that we should all hold hands. So we won't make you do that, but we do want you to know that sharing everything is a good thing. So our grant is about sharing. And we tried to be very careful when we were putting this grant together. And tried to share as much as we could from previous efforts and from what all of you might be doing out there in this regard. So we're sharing one of the goals of the Health Information Exchange Plan, and that is the audacious goal to improve the quality and continuity of care for California's foster children. So you'll hear more about this in the next 2.5 days as well. We're also sharing federal initiatives to establish standards. I've already mentioned MITA for healthcare delivery. So remember, that was the Medicaid Information Technology Architecture for healthcare delivery. On the human services side, we're sharing the National Human Services Information Architecture, and that is to human services what MITA is to health services. So there's two federal architectures there that we're sharing. And then between those two architectures is the National Information Exchange Model that helps us all speak the same data language. And we're sharing some local California initiatives that are demonstrating how sharing can and does work. So we're trying to springboard off of the great work that Alameda County is doing, that LA County is doing, Fresno County, Ventura County, and others who are all doing excellent work in regards to interoperability. So we're trying to leverage as much as we can. Now this slide might seem like a little bit of a non sequitur, but often when I travel outside the Golden State, I get the impression that people who have never been here think that all of California is Malibu, that we're all surfing in our spare time, and if we're not surfing, we're all connected with the film industry in one way or another. So let's make a movie. I know some folks are here from Illinois and from other places in the country, and I do harbor a bit of a dream to be a screenwriter, so maybe after I retire. So I thought I'd try this out. So let's make a movie. We can choose our own story, we can cast our own characters, we can create our own hero, and we can script our own outcome. That sounds like fun. So let's start with some story ideas. A family travels to Disneyland, and while they are there, Dad suffers a minor fall and needs to see a doctor. Or the other story idea is a migrant worker and her family follow the harvests, moving up and down the state as crops come ripe for picking. So some of you may recognize these two story ideas, or at least the premise of these two story ideas from the pre-reading. I've changed them ever so slightly to make them more Californian, but they are essentially the same kinds of story ideas. Both of these ideas would work for our movie, but because in spite of the color of my hair, I'm still a child at heart, and the first one involves Disneyland, we'll use that one. Okay. So a little bit about a structure here for those of you who are not film writers. The three-act structure is something that all of Hollywood uses, and sometimes it's ballooned out to 4 acts, but it's essentially the same. Act 2 and 3 in that situation of 4 acts is the same as Act 2 in a 3-act structure. So the Act 1 is the setup. That's where we engage the audience and give everyone a very basic idea of the story. Act 2 introduces and deals with some tension or some drama, because if you don't have tension and drama, you can't get to Act 3, right? That's what keeps you wrapped and in your seat, otherwise you're out the door and we won't have you for the 3rd act. Act 3 is where you resolve everything and then you tend back to equilibrium. So just wanted to, if we're going to be writing a movie together, I just want everybody on the same page about the 3-act structure. So let's go to Act 1. Act 1, there's a lot of things going on in Act 1, probably more things than going on in any other act. In this act, we expose or introduce a main character. This is the person or the people of our story whose actions drive the story. There is a dramatic premise that's introduced. This is what the story's about. There's a dramatic situation, and this is some circumstance or some circumstances surrounding the story. We also have to have an inciting incident. Not an exciting incident, an inciting incident. And this can be small or it can be large. It doesn't matter. It can be obscure. It might be something that later, after you've seen the movie, after you're having coffee after the movie or maybe cocktails, and you kind of go back over the movie or the play and think, what was it that drove that character to do that action? And that was the inciting incident. But it really sets the plot in motion, so it's very important. Then we have something called a plot point. There are 2. The first one is about halfway through the 1st act, and that is the point at which the hero takes on the problem for the movie. So a lot of things going on in Act 1. Now let's add some drama. So our family travels to Disneyland, and while there, Dad suffers a minor fall, is injured, and needs to see a doctor. Sadly, Dad takes a turn for the worse and doesn't make it. In her grief, I think everybody's reading ahead, right? In her grief, Mom lashes out and runs over the doctor with the family car. She is charged, she's arrested, and she's imprisoned. Thank you, Daniel, for the editing. There are no other relatives to care for the children, so now we have 3 new foster children in the system. So we've all heard the term, art imitates reality. It would be bold of me at this point to call our movie art, but while it seems a bit extreme, we do not have to suspend our disbelief. And while it may not happen exactly this way, children are orphaned every single day. And since we're writing the screenplay, we can make it happen any way we want. So back to our story, which I think should focus on the kids. So the story is really about the kids. I arbitrarily said there were 3, but there could be more or there could be fewer. So the rest of the story should focus on them. What kinds of experiences do they have? What sorts of environments do they grow up in? What happens to them over time, over their lives? What kinds of adults do they become? So here's some possible story elements that sort of tend toward the wah-wah, you know, the sad face in the corner. They're separated from their siblings. So now that they've lost their father and they've lost access to their mother, they've also lost access to each other, so they can't even comfort each other. They all go to different foster homes, and they all have multiple foster homes throughout their lives. This potentially leaves them scarred emotionally and possibly physically damaged. They probably have poor health diagnoses because they're inconsistent across the foster homes that they find themselves in, or the foster parents have inconsistent ways of dealing with them. They probably have no records of allergies or other things that could make their lives, if they had proper care and treatment, could make their lives tolerable. They probably receive multiple immunizations, and I don't think anybody needs that. And then they are probably prescribed inappropriate levels of things over their young lives that are never quite prepared to comprehend everything that's happening to them and the implications for the future. So how did we get here? How did we let this situation happen? I know we're writing the movie, but you know, this is the part where art imitates reality. How did we get here? That's how we got here. I didn't purposely make this out of focus, but I don't think you actually have to see the boxes and see what's in them to understand once I explain them. So each box, this is a map of the systems in any department in our Health and Human Services Agency. And we have 13 departments and 3 offices. So what we call this a spaghetti diagram, and every box is a system in an organization. And so you can see how the systems are connected to each other. You could probably also see that not any one system is connected to all systems. So they are all sort of connected here and there, sort of ad hoc, kind of callywhampus, as my mom used to say. So let me take a brief minute here to say that any writer's task is a research task. And these things, when we pull back the layers of the onions and look at these systems in departments, we find that they're built with different funding sources at different times, using different technologies. So there isn't anything interoperable about them save for the interfaces, you know, the hundreds of interfaces between them. So in our research, we find this map of data for those systems. And again, I don't think you have to read what's in those boxes once I explain them. On the left side is a list of all the systems that you saw in the previous slide. On the right side is a list of all the data elements that those systems use. But one of the things to notice about this slide is that there are fewer data elements. That list ends higher than the number of systems. So what we see here is that all of those systems are essentially using the same data elements. Now don't confuse that with sharing. What they're doing is they're all collecting the same data elements, they're all storing the same data elements, and then they're all using the same data elements in different ways. And the heavy, heavy black lines that you see means that those are the most popular data elements to be used. Those are probably name. I doubt that it's address, but there's probably some other identifying characteristics in there that are very popular among systems. So this situation, remember, this is answering the question, how did we get here? The other thing we need to note is this situation makes it very difficult for sharing information, and it makes writing a good outcome for our kids in our movie difficult, if not impossible. So here are some other possible story elements, and these are a little bit more friendly, if you will. Remember that we're writing the movie, so we can choose how the story unfolds. We can write in that in spite of the horrific circumstances of losing both of their parents, our kids in the movie can still find loving and trusting environments in which to grow up. They can access appropriate resources and tools for success at every stage of their life journey. And they can receive health care and social services coordinated with each other and the courts. And the people who are helping them have access to information and data to make good decisions. And that those good decisions are made in a smart fashion for these most vulnerable kids. So now we need to do a little quality assurance. Way back in Act 1, remember Act 1, our first plot point is when the hero takes on the problem. But we didn't mention the hero or write the hero into the story yet. Something's missing in our screenplay. Who is the hero of this story? And this is the interactive part where I would ask for your participation just briefly. It'll just take a few seconds. I would like for each and every one of you to take a look around the room. Go ahead. Take a look. Look around the room. Got a good look? We are the heroes. We are the heroes that are going to write how this story ends. We get to design the means for better outcomes for these kids, and we get to figure out how to share everything that makes sense. We get to make the changes that will drive smart decisions for these kids and all the other kids like them. We are the heroes. You are the heroes. So in closing, I would just add that May is Foster Care Month in this country. So I think we picked the right story. So we're delighted that you're here and could join us in this important effort. We need each other to be the heroes. It's impossible in our story for any one of us to be a hero by ourselves. We've endeavored to invite the key people who can help us cut to the chase in our efforts, and who will feel good about being here, and who will feel good about helping people, and who will enjoy making a positive difference and building on efforts that have already been built on and leveraging whatever it is that we can. We're excited you're here and thrilled to be doing this important work with you, and we hope to engage you in positive ways over the coming months to continue this work. You've been invited here to be the change we want to see and to sustain that drive. Thank you for what you're about to do.